Uh, Bob is my teacher. I want to say, when I went to U.S. In 2014 to attend the Vista Chair Foundation One training, Bob was my teacher. Okay, so it's a great honor for me to have Bob here to talk about his chairship and his successful experience. Welcome, Bob.
Thank you very much, Sheldon. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So, Bob, you want to say something about yourself first, right?
Yeah, so first of all, it's a pleasure to be with all of you. What I'm going to give in this talk is my experience in running my own manufacturing companies here in the U.S. For over 30 years, being an owner and CEO. And I've been a Vistage chair for almost 23 years, which means I've been coaching CEOs and senior executives for about a 23-year period. So I've worked with thousands of senior executives over that span of time. So I'm going to bring you my 30 years of my own experience running and managing and leading and owning companies, along with working with hundreds of other Vistage owners and CEOs on this particular topic of accountability.
Yeah. So your topic is 3 steps to more accountable company culture.
Yeah, it's 3 steps to a more accountable company culture. And the reason I've picked this particular topic is when I look across all the conversations I've had with senior executives over the years, right, almost every manager or leader wishes they had a more accountable organization. A more accountable organization. They wish their people were more accountable for producing results.
Right.
So, and my definition of accountability is a very simple one.
Yeah.
It's giving people regular opportunities to share whether or not they've kept their promises.
Okay. So just keep promise, right? That's your term of accountability.
Yeah, just keep your promises to accomplish goals, your promises to accomplish objectives and initiatives, your promises to follow through on tasks, your promises to follow through on requests and commitments, promises of all kind. And all we're talking about is making sure that people have the tools for making promises, keeping promises, and sharing whether or not they've kept those promises.
Good. So what would you like to proceed your insight?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you the 3 steps that I have found. They are very simple steps. Most everybody understands intellectually what the steps are. Right. What I find, though, is putting the steps into practice and execution is where the challenge comes from. So the 3 steps for having a more accountable company culture, from all my experiences, step number 1 is to provide your employees, your key people, with crystal clear expectations. In other words, the manager and the leader sits down with the employee or the direct report and makes it clear, what do I expect from your job? And I'm not talking about a typical job description that lists a bunch of duties and tasks. Because when I ask CEOs and leaders, I say, are you paying for activities and tasks, or are you paying for results? The answer is always, I'm paying for results.
For results.
I say, okay, great. That's great. Now, let me ask, do your key employees know the very short list of results they're supposed to be accomplishing on a weekly and monthly basis? And most of them say, yeah, most leaders think their people know it. I say, okay, that's interesting. Let me talk to some of your people, your managers and your key staff, and let me ask them on a piece of paper to write down 1, 2, or 3 numerical goals that they're responsible and accountable for on a weekly or monthly basis. 1 to 3 numerical goals. It starts with what we call a SMART goal. SMART is an acronym. The S means specific, the M is measurable, the A is achievable or aligned with a vision, the R is realistic, and the T is time-bound. It has a due date. So when I ask them, can you write down the 1 to 3 numerical goals that you in your job as a manager or a leader are responsible and accountable for? Most of them are not clear on how to write that goal. Let's assume they do know the number or the metric or the goal. Then I say, okay, how is that goal measured? What's the system for measuring that goal? A lot of times they're not quite sure how that works. And the third question I say is, okay, how did you do last month on those goals? How are you doing year to date against those goals? And if we're 2 weeks into the current month, how are you tracking in the current month against those goals? And most managers cannot clearly identify those. So the first step is, let's make sure people know what are the numbers or metrics tied to their position, what they're responsible and accountable for. How is it measured? And what's the scoreboard or what's the methodology for them to know how they're doing?
Okay. So many managers would not be very clear, right?
No. And if you think your people know what those numerical goals are, my challenge to you would be ask your people that report to you to write down 1 to 3 numbers, things that they're measuring that are critical in their role or their job. And in most cases, they can't do that. Now, I want to create some distinction. Goals are one thing. They're a recurring metric every week, every month, every quarter, every year. It kind of goes on and on. You may change the number, but what you're measuring for the position pretty much stays the same. There's also something known as an objective. It's a one-time project or program, has a start date and a finish date. For example, hire a key position by this date, put a business plan in by this date, document and streamline a critical process by this date, put in a training program and test your people on that program by this date. So goals are recurring week after week, month after month. Objectives are one time. They have a start date and a finish date, but they are critical initiatives or projects or programs that will help the company save time or money, generate revenue, or improve morale. Again, a goal or objective is a one-time project or program that'll save time or money, help generate revenue, and or improve morale. Doesn't have to be all those things, but it's got to be at least one of those things. Okay?
Yeah.
So crystal clear expectations, first step.
Yeah.
So
And,
assuming
yeah,
you...
Bob, let me just ask for one point. You want to make things clear, right? And then the people normally, to your surprise or to their own surprise, they are not crystal clear.
Exactly.
Then what kind of issues behind this scenario?
Well, people think of their jobs as, again, just staying busy doing a bunch of duties and tasks. And they think if they do a bunch of duties and tasks and they don't get criticized too much or yelled at, they think they're doing a good job. See, the beauty of having a very short list of goals, 1 to 3, and maybe 1 or 2 critical objectives, projects or programs, and it's clear how those are being measured, then somebody can be what we call self-managed. They don't need their leaders supervising them or micromanaging them because they know what's expected, and they can pretty much know how they're doing performance-wise at any point in the week or the month or the year, because they know what's being measured. It's a short list, and they know the scoreboard, how well they're doing. It's just that simple, again, intellectually. But I would say be patient with your people when you first start creating goals and objectives. I would ask them, write down on a piece of paper what you think are measurable outputs. And you may have to have several conversations and help them. I've got some tools and worksheets that I can send to you, Sheldon, that can help and assist. It's got a basic template with some examples of goals and objectives. Now, here's what I have found. High performers, people that perform at a high level in a company, they really like to have clear expectations in terms of goals and objectives. High performers love to be measured.
Yeah.
Low performers do not.
They don't know.
Yeah. So the caution here is in most companies, you've got a number of high performers, you've got some middle performers, and you've got some low performers. So the caution is if you start putting this in place, again, I believe every employee should have at least one metric or goal assigned to their position. It takes a little creativity. But again, low performers don't want to be measured. They just want to stay what we call underneath the radar, keep collecting their paycheck, and not have to be accountable on these goals and objectives. Right?
Yeah.
So that's step number one. Fairly straightforward, but it may take some time. It may take you a few weeks and several conversations.
Yeah.
Once you've got that in place, though, now comes step number two. Provide regular, respectful feedback. So in other words, once people are clear on what's expected, we have to give them an opportunity to share, again, whether or not they've kept their promises, whether they're accomplishing their goals and objectives, whether they're staying on track or not. And one of the best tools for that, I learned this when I was in Vistage as a member running my companies, and it's what I teach my Vistage members. It's called a weekly one-to-one meeting. One-to-one, manager and direct report, sitting every week, private, uninterrupted conversation. And one of the big things they're talking about, this is a 20 or 30-minute meeting. And I know for many of you saying, meetings, we already have way too many meetings. Yeah, but I'm talking about having a very productive focus meeting on goals and objectives. Yeah. There's some other items in there as well. But the idea is every week, the employee or the direct report will report out on how they're doing on their goals and objectives. So we're not waiting for a surprise to happen. We're not waiting for the annual company performance review. Every week, the employee knows and they're having a conversation with their manager or leader on how well they're performing. Simple. And I tell you, if there are clear expectations and every week the employee has an opportunity to report to the manager and the manager can ask some questions, if the employee is not tracking, if they're off track on their goals, you can do what we call a course correction in the moment. We don't have to wait for months. We're going to course correct, much like a rocket ship leaving Earth and headed to the moon. Yeah. That rocket ship is course correcting every few seconds.
Yeah.
You're just a straight shot. No, there's wind conditions, there's other things. Always. So the idea is let's course correct every week. So in essence, someone's going to get regular, respectful feedback. Now for me, Sheldon, there are two forms of feedback that are part of this accountability system. One piece of feedback is complimenting or acknowledging or appreciating your people.
Yeah.
What I found in my companies, when I was owning and running them, and in my Vistage member companies, is employees feel underappreciated, undervalued.
Yeah.
And most employees want to be loved and respected. And one of the ways you can love and respect an employee is to compliment and acknowledge them even for routine work that they're doing well.
Yeah.
I've never heard an employee complain that says, please, manager, stop acknowledging me, stop complimenting me, stop appreciating me. I feel too much love and respect. You don't hear that. When we would survey my company employees every year, the lowest rating my managers got, Sheldon, was the fact that they were underappreciated. So one piece of this regular respectful feedback, and again, you'll have the opportunity every week, just keep track of some notes on things you want to acknowledge.
Right.
One of the ways we talk about it is filling up a human being's emotional bank account, right? If you think of a human being having inside of them an emotional bank account, we've got to fill up that bank account with money called compliments and acknowledgments. So that when you give the other type of feedback, which is coaching feedback, sometimes thought of as critical feedback, you have to have something in the employee's emotional bank account. You have all these goodwill acknowledgments that you can withdraw from.
Yeah.
So the idea is let's compliment them in these weekly one-on-ones, and let's also do some coaching. Let them know what's working and what's not. Developing their skills, developing them as an employee and a human being. Now, for most human beings, Sheldon, it's very difficult to provide feedback.
Why?
Great question. Well, first of all, it feels a little awkward for us to compliment and acknowledge another human being. Part of the psychology on that is we all think that we're not as good. We have some of this, I'm not enough, I'm less than, right? So because we don't feel really good about our own self-esteem, it's sometimes hard to give another person and build up their self-esteem, make them feel good about themselves. What I told my managers regularly, Sheldon, was this when I was running my companies.
Yeah.
I told them, you are in the self-esteem enhancement business. One of your jobs with your employees that report to you is to build up their self-esteem and make them feel good about themselves. Because if people feel good about themselves, they will connect better with their fellow employees, with suppliers, with customers, even with their own family members.
Right. Motivated.
Exactly.
Right.
Hugely motivating. So again, the step 2 piece is regular respectful feedback, complimenting and coaching. And the best vehicle for that is, again, this weekly one-to-one meeting. 20 to 30 minutes. And I know for some of you that are listening to this or watching this are going, wow, if I have 5 direct reports, let's assume you have 10 direct reports. You want me to meet with each of them one-to-one each week? Yeah, so let's do the math on this. Let's assume you have 10 direct reports, which is a lot.
Right.
Let's assume you spend 30 minutes each week with them. That's a total of 5 hours. Now, I'm guessing most of you are working at least 40, 45, or 50 hours in a week. I'm asking you to spend 5 hours with the people that report directly to you.
Yeah.
To make sure they have clear expectations and regular respectful feedback. Simple. Simple. Now, the other part of this regular respectful feedback and giving someone an opportunity to share whether or not they've kept their promises is, in addition to the one-to-one meeting each week, I believe managers should also meet with all of their direct reports in a team meeting once a week. And again, at that team meeting with all the direct reports, each direct report lets the other direct reports know whether or not they've kept on track with their goals and objectives. So at those meetings, they give a brief, maybe 1 or 2 minute update. On track, ahead of plan, below plan.
Yeah.
So here's the way the system works. Twice a week, the direct report will share how they're doing on their goals and objectives with their manager one-to-one privately. They'll also share how they're doing on their goals and objectives in a group setting with their peers and the manager in the room. Low performers will not be able to stay a low performer very long. If twice a week they have to admit they didn't keep their promise, they're falling behind, and the leader's coaching them and challenging them and providing them with tools and training. And at some point in time, I don't know how long, but after 2, 3, 4 months of the low performer continuing to have to admit one-on-one and in a group setting that they're falling behind, their ego cannot handle it. So they either step up and start performing, or they'll leave the company, typically. All right? Yeah. But again, the manager's got to be able to give the coaching feedback. And what makes giving coaching feedback, so we talked about complimenting people is kind of tough because it feels awkward. Coaching or confronting somebody, Vistage has a term called carefrontational. It's a made-up word. It means to confront with care, confront with dignity, confront with respect. Most human beings would rather not confront somebody, because most of us were raised, if you don't have anything nice to say to somebody, don't say anything. Make people feel comfortable, treat them like guests, right?
Yeah.
We're not used to giving feedback in a coaching manner about a shortfall or a gap in performance.
Yeah. So that's kind of people's psychology, right? It's a human nature.
Yes. It's not in our nature to compliment or acknowledge, because we typically, as humans, we tend to see what's missing or what the gap is. Instead of the glass being half full of water, it's half empty. And especially as managers and leaders, we are almost trained to see what's missing, where the gaps are. So I ask my Vistage members, catch your people doing something right. Because 95% of the time or greater, your people are doing a good to very good job. So all I'm asking you to do is catch them and acknowledge it with specific, genuine compliments. Or if they're not doing something right, with dignity and respect, coach them, let them know that there's a gap.
Yeah.
There's some language we use, and again, there's a script. I believe we taught, Vistage shares that. We've also refined it. So let's assume I'm coaching you and I need to give you some coaching feedback, Sheldon. You're my direct report. And let's assume that one of your behaviors is showing up late to meetings, our one-to-one meetings, our team meetings, maybe your department meetings. So the conversation would go like this. This is a carefrontational script. Hey, Sheldon, are you open for an observation or some feedback? I would get your permission. And you would probably say yes.
Yeah.
I say, at times, I've noticed the pattern of showing up late to meetings, which seems to be causing some lost productivity, some frustration and anxiety, and it's actually costing the company money because we're wasting people's time. And I'm just wondering what that's all about. Now, you notice how carefrontational that was. I first asked permission. Are you open for an observation or feedback? Simple. And all the time, someone's going to say, yes, I'm open. I'm not going to say no. They wouldn't even know what you're going to talk about. So yes.
Yeah.
Notice at times, not like all the time, I didn't say you or your, right? When I say you or your, now I'm attacking you. That means it's very disrespectful. I'm not saying you or your. At times, I've noticed a pattern of coming late to meetings, not following through on promises, not following our processes, not hitting goals and objectives, raising your voice or disrespecting people in the hallway, right? You can fill in the blank with whatever you want there. At times, I've noticed a pattern of, in this case, coming late to meetings. And it seems to be causing, right? We want to give some impact, either some lost productivity in hours, some negative emotions, or it's putting some relationships at risk, or it's costing us in money. Okay?
Yeah.
Some aspect of impact. And then you just finish by saying, and I'm just wondering what that's all about. Simple, carefrontational. And then the employee can respond, and whatever they say, all you're doing is listening, understanding, and validating. I get it. I understand. I know it's tough getting to meetings. I know you're busy.
Yeah.
You're not agreeing with them. You're just validating their point of view. And then the last piece of this is, okay, now that we're clear on coming late to meetings has a negative impact, what do you think can be done about that? We're going to empower the employee to come up with their own solution. Maybe set an alarm 15 minutes prior. Maybe prepare for a meeting in advance. But we're going to let them see if they can come up with a solution. So that's what we call a confrontational feedback script.
Mm-hmm.
It's with dignity and respect, because again, it's not easy to confront or coach people.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah. You point out the problems, but you give them the respect they deserve.
Exactly. We're not saying you are always late to meetings. You never show up on time, right? We're not finger pointing. We're not treating them like a child, acting like a critical parent. No, no, no.
Yeah, right.
I'm treating you as a human being with a fragile ego, and I'm respecting you. Are you open for an observation? Or are you open for some feedback? At times I've noticed this pattern of, it seems to be causing this kind of impact, and I'm just wondering what that's all about. And then they say whatever they say, and you listen, understand, and validate their point of view. And they just simply ask, what do you think can be done about hitting goals, keeping promises, following a process, like coming to meetings on time? What do you think can be done about that? People are good problem solvers. They just need to be made aware. One of the sayings I like, Sheldon, is with awareness comes choice. With awareness comes choice. So what we're doing as a manager in step 2 of the feedback system is we're making the direct report or employee aware that there's a gap in performance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a gap. Here's what I think about it. What are your thoughts on it? What can we do, both of us sitting on the same side of the table, looking at this gap, this performance gap? What can we do to help fix it?
Yeah.
Is there more resources you need? Is there more training? How can I assist you as your servant leader manager? And the gap needs to get closed. Doesn't have to be closed overnight, but within a few weeks, maybe a few months,
gradually.
you have to close the gap.
Yeah.
Because here's the other awareness. If you're now aware that there's a gap in performance, and if you continue to choose not to fill the gap, not to close it, you will also be choosing not to be employed with this company. There will no longer be a position for you. Now that's down the line, right? We're not going to say that at the outset, but in essence, we're saying, hey, I noticed the gap. We're going to be talking about it every week till this gap gets closed. And if the gap can't get closed with all of our training and efforts and my coaching within a reasonable period of time, we will have to make a change in the job. See, those are awkward conversations. But the saying we have is you get what you tolerate. So if you tolerate low performance, if you tolerate people coming late to meetings, if you put up with people not hitting goals, if you put up or tolerate people not keeping promises or not following processes, if you tolerate or put up with it, you're condoning it. You're almost encouraging it. So to be a leader or a manager of human beings is challenging.
Right.
What's that?
So you actually are encouraging, discouraging high performers.
Exactly.
Right.
Because here's the deal, Sheldon, what we know is if you allow low performers to keep getting paid the same as high performers are going to go, why should I work so hard? Why should I be a high performer? I want to go to another company where I can be appreciated as a high performer and where they don't keep low performers. So yeah, low performers drag everything down. But it's difficult because when we're dealing with a low performer and we have to put their job at risk or possibly terminate them or fire them, we feel bad for them and their family, right? We feel somewhat responsible. But we're going to make it very fair. We've given them clear expectations, goals, and objectives. We're talking about it every week in a one-to-one and in a group or a team meeting. We're giving them compliments when they're doing well and coaching when they're not doing so well. So in essence, every week they're getting a little mini performance review, a job evaluation. We don't have to wait for the once a year written document from human resources, which most managers don't like filling that out anyway. And most employees don't like receiving that performance review. It creates a lot of anxiety and stress. It's also been proven not to really alter behavior or results that much. So why not every week give them a little mini 5 or 10 minute performance review on how they're doing? So that's step number 2. Step number 3, provide progressive rewards and consequences. And what that means is if someone's doing a good job, they'll get rewarded. Maybe a pay raise, maybe a bonus, maybe a gift card, maybe a more challenging, fun, enjoyable task, maybe learning and growing and development opportunities. And if they're not performing well, they will get what we call progressive consequences. The first consequence is I'm going to make you aware with an initial conversation. I'm going to let you know there's a performance gap. That's the first easy consequence.
Yeah.
Second consequence, if it's serious enough and the gap is not closed, is okay, it's been a few weeks or maybe a month or two. We still have a performance gap. Now I'm going to have another conversation with you, and I'm going to have to document it, put it in writing. In this documented conversation, I'd like you to sign and date that we had it. I will sign my signature and date it. It's now going to go to your personnel file. Now we're saying it's serious. We've had an initial conversation and a documented conversation that we in the US call a verbal warning. It's verbal, but we're actually documenting it. Maybe the third consequence, if another month goes by and the performance gap is still there, is a written warning. So, strike 1, initial conversation. Strike 2, verbal warning. Strike 3, written warning.
Written warning.
The fourth strike might be termination or suspension or demotion or time off. But usually after 1 or 2 of these warnings, people start going, whoa, they're really serious. And what tends to happen is people either step up their performance and close the gap, or they leave the company. I think it works either way. That's the 3-step formula. It's just that simple, and it's just that challenging. Most everybody knows those steps. So of course, people have to know what's expected in terms of crystal clear goals. Yeah, I know, but a lot of people don't know what those goals are. They don't know how they're measured. They don't know how they're doing against those goals. Step 2, we got to give them feedback.
Yeah.
Complimenting when they're doing well, coaching when they're not. Regular feedback, regular respectful, like weekly. It's like, oh, Bob, no, I'm too busy. I'll do it every other week or maybe once a month. The trouble with a once a month one-to-one is if either person is out sick or on vacation or on business travel, then they skip that month if they don't reschedule. Then it's now once every 2 months. It's not often enough. We need the frequency.
It's too late.
Yeah, it's too late. Much like working out. You can't get on a treadmill once a month and think it's going to help. You don't be, I'm going to exercise once a month. That doesn't do it. Your body needs regular exercise like 3, 4, 5 times a week. And that's what we're doing here. Those are the 3 steps. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple, again, to understand, putting that in place. So my Vistage members that have these steps in place, Sheldon, I will tell you, all of their key staff have these goals and objectives. They have weekly one-to-ones and team meetings where they report out on it, progressive rewards and consequences. They have a more accountable culture. People are accountable and responsible. They get to share twice a week whether or not they've kept their promises on goals, objectives, right? Critical items, critical tasks. And they have, my Vistage members, my CEOs and business owners have most of them have what I call a self-managed company. In other words, the management team and the key people clearly know what's expected. They know how they're performing. They know what the scoreboard is. They know how they're doing on a daily or weekly or monthly basis. So they can manage themselves, and the CEO or business owner at the top of the organizational pyramid can work strategically on the business rather than micromanaging or supervising in the business. Because the idea is the more accountable your culture is, the more everybody makes. The people that know their goals and objectives perform better, which means they're worth more, which means over time they get paid more. If they're performing better, the company brings in more profitable revenue and more net profit. So the company's more financially successful. And when the business owner or CEO should ever go to sell the organization, because the organization is self-managed without the CEO or business owner needed for day-to-day operations, the company's worth more. The buyer buying the company doesn't have as much at risk because there's an accountable culture in place. An accountability culture is a culture that's a lot more fun and enjoyable to work in, especially for high performers, not low performers.
Good.
That's the basics.
Good. Wonderful, Bob. You have refined this three-step approach, right, based on your tremendous experience on business and the coaching side.
Yes.
Then have you, seen any kind of hurdles when the company, in the execution of this approach?
Yes. Sheldon, the main hurdle is if you've had an organization where people are not accountable, they're not measured against goals and objectives, against metrics, and they're not used to getting regular feedback, complimenting and coaching, and they're not used to progressive rewards and consequences. In essence, you're changing the game of employment. So for many people, we as a human species don't like change. We like to keep things the same, even if it's not working so well. So what you're introducing is, if you don't have any of the goals, objectives, and feedback in place and progressive rewards and consequences, it's like a cultural revolution. You're changing things.
Cultural revolution.
It's a cultural revolution. So you have to prepare people and say, look, not as a leader been running this company very well because I haven't given you a game to play where you know what's expected in specific measurable terms, and I have not been giving you a system of regular feedback. So I've been asking you to play this game of business, this game of job employment, and I haven't told you how to win at the game. Because here's what I found, Sheldon. When we as children are introduced to a game the first time, chess, checkers, hide and seek, whatever the game is as a child, the first time you learn a game, you have two things you needed to know. What are the rules or boundaries for the game? The second, more important thing is, what's the object or the goal of the game? How do we win? Say, oh, that's how we win. So what we're doing with these clear expectations, regular feedback, and progressive rewards and consequences, we're giving people a game on how to perform better. But a game only works if you're measuring something. So again, you got to be prepared for people resisting this change, because like I said, it's a cultural revolution.
Bob, the term of cultural revolution is, sounds quite familiar to we Chinese. But it's a culprit, right?
To most people. But so you got to let people know, look, we're going to change things here, and it's going to be a little uneasy. It's going to be uncomfortable for a period of time. But then, like any other change, you'll get used to it, and it will benefit you. Because if you're able to produce more and be more valuable to the company, and the company's able to make more net profit, we as a company can afford to pay you more. So if you perform better against clear metrics, you are worth more and can get paid more over the long run.
And you mentioned some hurdles, right? And what are really the key in terms of getting, the approach implemented? The leader, the CEO, is the key.
Yeah, so the leader needs to be really focused and disciplined to follow through on this. And what I find with a lot of leaders is they suffer from what we call shiny object syndrome. They get distracted very easily. And what I tell a lot of managers and leaders when I do speaking on this topic is this is a very routine, structured way to lead people. Goals, objectives, regular meetings every week with a written agenda, covering agenda items, regular team meetings every week. It's routine and somewhat maybe boring at times, but it's the repetition that people can count on. So the other hurdle is making sure managers and leaders follow through on having these meetings and following a written agenda. I tell people, look, if you don't have a written agenda, don't call it a meeting, call it a gathering. And most people have gatherings. They get together with people in a room or over Zoom, and they just talk about this and that. Sometimes decisions get made. Sometimes accountability happens. Sometimes action promises are followed up on. But other times they're just talking, and that's why a lot of meetings are wasted time. They waste productivity. So to me, it's a meeting if it has a written agenda. But again, this is routine, some of the boring things to do to be, I think, an effective leader and manager. So the CEO or business owner or president or managing director at the top needs to have a meeting with their direct reports. Their direct reports need to have meetings with their direct reports, and every chain of command all the way down, all the layers of management need to have these weekly performance review meetings.
So the leadership team should be well disciplined, right?
Yes. So the story on this that I was working with one of my Vistage CEOs for several years. I was trying to get him, he was the owner of the company and the CEO, to have these weekly direct report meetings. So I come in after working with him for a couple of years. I sit down with him for our monthly one-to-one as Vistage Share member. I say, how are you doing on having these weekly one-to-ones with your direct reports? He goes, Bob, I am having those one-to-one meetings in theory. What does that mean in theory?
In
he goes,
theory.
well, in theory. This is what he told me. I was laughing. What do you mean by in theory? He goes, well, I have a written agenda. I have the meetings on the calendar, and they're recurring every week. He says, I hardly ever conduct the meetings. I don't hold the meetings. I says, well, you're not having the meetings. He goes, no, I am having them in theory. I go, no, you're either having the meetings and conducting them or not. So this is where the discipline and the focus and being organized, that's a big hurdle for a lot of managers. Being organized takes work, and it's easier to be disorganized for many people.
Yeah. So, but it seems to be the case that you have to, help the leadership team, especially the CEO, accountable first.
Yes. Yeah. This idea of accountability starts with the top, and then the direct reports, the senior management team, and then the middle management, and then the front line, all the way down. Everybody's got to have this level of discipline to hold structured, written agenda meetings where we talk about goals and objectives and provide each other feedback. My Vistage members over the 23 years I've been working with them that do this regularly have an accountability culture. They've gone through the cultural revolution many years ago. They have more free time to work strategically on the business, to grow the business more profitably. Their people are happier because when people know what's expected and they get a short piece of feedback every week, the manager or CEO or the leader does not have to micromanage. Like I said, they don't have to supervise. Most employees don't want to be supervised. They don't want a parent over them, treating them like a child. So if they know what's expected of them and they know how to accomplish those goals, we just need to touch base a couple times a week. And then maybe have a conversation here and there.
Yeah, treat them as adults, right? And
Yes,
give them
how
respect.
about that? Let's treat them as an adult. What a unique concept. But in order to do that, again, they need goals and objectives, crystal clear, and a feedback mechanism.
Got you, Bob. And you've been with your members for on this for how many years? 20 years.
Well, yeah, 20. I'm going on 23. So I've had some of my CEO members have been with me 18 to 20 years or longer. I've got other members that have been with me 10 to 15 years, and then I've got some newer members. It runs the whole gamut. And again, I've got CEO groups and business owner groups. And then I've got also the key executive group, which I love because the key executives are the direct reports of the CEOs.
Right.
So and they're a lot of fun.
So it seems to be a quite successful approach, right? Based on your experience.
It is. I mean, if you've got a CEO or business owner or managing director in a Vistage group, and then you've got one or two or maybe more of their direct reports in a key executive group. Now, both of them in separate groups are getting great speakers. They're working issues and opportunities as an advisory board. And now you've got multiple people being taught Vistage leadership and business management to bring into the company.
Yeah.
It works a lot better. And the companies that tend to have both CEOs, managing partners, managing directors, and key executives are more profitable.
Yeah. Okay, great learning, Bob. Well, we have our team has collected some questions. Some questions look quite interesting. Let me pick up some for your discussion. The first one, because you talk about corporate culture, right? And one of our audience, he asked each company at different stages of development, how to refine the corporate culture suitable for their own company. But you have your own approach. And, you have an insight, he is specifically referred to a different stage. What is your opinion?
Yeah.
In terms of different stage.
Yeah. Again, if we come to the concept that employees want to be loved and respected, they want to be appreciated. I just had my Vistage CEO group meeting earlier today. Okay. And what we're finding is really good employees are getting paid the top compensation. They're getting paid a lot of money. Yeah. They also, really good employees have a choice of working almost with any company they want. So today we talked about how do you retain good people? And I said, basically, what's been known for years is employees when they leave a company, they're not really leaving the company, they're leaving their manager. So the idea for company culture, no matter what the stage is keep developing your people that manage others to be really good human beings, to treat people with dignity and respect, build up self-esteem, coach them, develop, help people grow and develop. So I don't care whether you're a startup with a few, 3, 4, 5 employees, or you've got 500 or 5,000. The idea is if you're managing and leading human beings, really care about the people, right?
Yeah.
With empathy, with compassion, with accountability, with growth, with development, with feedback, everything we've been talking about. Because in order to grow the company to the next level, you want to ideally grow the company, and you need to grow and develop people. And you want people to be as loyal as they can and stay with you as long as they can, as long as they're performing at a high level. So growth and development of people. What we find is if people are growing and developing and learning, and they realize that their manager really, truly cares about them as an employee and a human being, and that's part of what those one-to-one meetings do. There's other things other than accountability in those meetings. We're asking how they're doing. Is there some challenges? Is there something they want to share? Is there some feedback they want to give the manager? You're creating a relationship of trust and dignity and respect. So by investing that 20 or 30 minutes each week, one-on-one, you're building a stronger, connected relationship.
Yeah.
People love that.
Yeah. So from people's perspective, right, it works at any stage.
If you have human beings that you're working with, right, which is all of us, right?
Okay.
And I appreciate there's different cultures, but most human beings want to be appreciated. They want dignity and respect.
Right. That's
and
human
so
nature.
Treating people like a human being you actually care about rather than just an employee. In my companies, we call them team members. They were not employees. They were part of a team. They were a member of a team. They were team members. In my companies, the organization chart was upside down. I, as the CEO and owner, was at the bottom. My senior management team was next to me at the bottom of the org chart. Then middle managers, then frontline supervisors, then our frontline employees at the top, and then our customers at the very top. It was an upside down organization chart to symbolize servant leadership.
Okay. Good. Thank you, Bob. One more question. So you talk about, your approach to the cultural revolution, corporate cultural revolution. And the one of our audience asks about how does company culture influence strategic direction and development?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. Here's my belief. Culture is everything. If you have a high-performing, robust, productive culture where people feel valued and appreciated, you can take that culture and those people and put whatever strategy. If people feel they're part of a team in a culture where they're cared for and appreciated and held accountable, whatever strategies you come up with, they're going to follow you. I think in order to go have strategic direction for growth, for the company to grow profitably, you need to have a foundational culture where people are loved and respected and appreciated. Here's what I set up in my company. This was the vision I had for my company culture so that we could pursue our strategy, Sheldon. I said I wanted our internal culture to be so robust, so inspirational, so enjoyable, so fulfilling, so satisfying for all of our team members that they got so much self-esteem and felt so good being at work that when the weekends would come, the employees would dread the weekends. Like, oh, I don't want to have a weekend. I don't want to have time off. I will miss my job. Okay, that was a drama, right? I'm being dramatical here. But the idea was, okay, maybe that would never happen where they would dread the weekend. But on Sunday evening, I wanted them to look forward to coming to work on Monday. So when you have that culture, you can have whatever strategies and people are behind you. They're going to follow. It creates followership. If you don't have a good culture, people are not going to want to fulfill the strategies. That's been my experience. Or they won't do it as willingly. The idea is to have people fully engaged on your strategies, head, heart, and gut, fully engaged in helping the company grow strategically.
Okay. So you're saying a highly motivated team, right, can shoot in any kind of strategy.
You show a highly motivated team where people feel appreciated. They are with you. They will accomplish some amazing goals and objectives and strategies because they feel trusted, they feel loved, they feel respected, they feel appreciated. Yeah,
got you, Bob.
It's just that easy and it's just that challenging. I realize these concepts, we all understand them. We all intellectually understand them. Executing, you got to be thinking about caring for your people every single hour of every single day, I believe.
Yeah. This is not easy
It's a
job.
never-ending job.
Never ending.
Never ending.
Yeah. You got to be very resilient, right, for doing that.
Yes, and disciplined and focused and organized.
Right.
This is not easy. I don't want to make it sound. The concepts are easy. Executing them every hour, every day, every week, because things get in the way.
Yeah.
And problems come up and challenges come up, but you got to push through that and make sure you know you're dealing with fragile human beings.
Right. Fragile human beings.
Fragile human beings with an ego that's like an egg with a thin shell. That egg can get crushed and bruised very easily. These egos, very tender.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bob. One more question. So we have discussed about culture, and one question is that why is the most problems of a company? Because you have met many, you have coached, you have trained many business owners, right, and CEOs and key executives.
Yes.
And the question is that why is the most problems of a company directly related to the founder or the business owner?
Well, it's funny you mention that. Yeah. Well, there's a saying that I presented to my group, my CEO group at today's meeting, and it goes like this. The fish rots at the head. Now, I don't know if that's even true or not, right? The fish rots at the head. So if the founder, here's what I would do early coaching with my CEOs 20 some years ago, and they would be talking about a problem in their company week after week, month after month, a recurring problem. And I would say, would you like to get to the root cause of the problem? They go, yes. I go, are you sure you want to get to the root cause of the problem? Yes. I would pull out of my little briefcase this little reflective surface called a mirror. I say, look in this mirror, CEO, and you will find the root cause of the problem. It's you. Your thinking, your mindset, your disregard of people, the way you criticize, the way you raise your voice, the way you diminish and demean people, the way you don't provide clear direction, the way you're overreactive. So what I focus on with my members is what is their mindset? Who are they being? And what I like them to strive for is to be version 5.0 of themselves, the most evolved adult version. And I have each of my CEOs have for a new year what's known as an affirmation statement. It's an I am. So I want them to say I am as their mantra every morning and evening or throughout the day. I want them to meditate. I am focused, disciplined, appreciative, grateful, assertive, confident, worthy, empathetic, compassionate. I want them to pick 3 to 5 words that is their mindset so that they can become the most evolved, and they recite this affirmation. And then in my monthly one-to-ones, I say, okay, give me some behavioral examples of where you were compassionate, where you wouldn't normally have been, where you were organized, where you were disciplined, where you were assertive, where you were confident, where you were focused. I want them to behave their way into a new way of being, take on new behaviors. So I want the founder or the CEO to transform who they are. Because if you're version 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, the rest of your company will be better. But if you're version 1.0, the lowest, least evolved, your company is going to have all kinds of problems and challenges. I'm sorry, that's been my experience.
That's your recipe.
It is. Starts with the head. The fish rots at the head.
Well, I know that you've met so many business leaders, and when you challenge them, of course they normally in their own comfort zone, right? You challenge them, they are kind of out of the comfort zone, right? Or
yes.
into discomfort zone.
Yes, very much so. Yeah, Chip. And people. So when I tell Vistage members, look, high-performing Vistage groups, in my opinion, there's vulnerability and challenge occurring at the same time. People are vulnerable, willing to admit what they don't know, admit their fears, their mistakes, admit their real challenges, right? Vulnerability. But then with that, the group and I, as their chair, I'm going to challenge them with tough questions, with observations, with feedback, with holding them accountable, with pushing them to take steps and behaviors and actions they normally wouldn't to achieve their goals, objectives, and dreams and visions.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful Vistage groups are not easy. It's not for what we call the faint of heart. You got to be willing to hang in there, because vulnerability and challenge are not normal for most human beings.
Yeah. Okay. So, but you think most of the people can develop the kind of vulnerability, right?
Well, if they're willing to, yeah, if they're willing, because being vulnerable is challenging, because we don't want to admit fears. We don't want to admit mistakes. We don't want to admit we don't know, right?
Yeah.
We want to appear like we have all the answers and that we're cool, calm, and confident. And the reality is all of us have some insecurities. It's difficult for us to share that, though. It's not easy to be vulnerable.
Okay.
But it's very courageous, I believe, very courageous to be vulnerable.
Right. Okay, thank you, Bob. Let me check and see another question. One friend from the audience mentioned that how can we train managers to look inward when they face problems rather than complaining and blaming others first?
Yeah. So that's one of my favorite topics. Yeah. So here's the two mindsets that I believe. You can either have what we call an ownership mindset, where the manager or leader takes 100% responsibility for their decisions, behaviors, and results. So in other words, if they made a bad decision, they take 100% ownership that was their bad decision. Or if they chose a poor behavior, or they've got a poor result. Or you can have what we call victim mentality, which is for ego protection. Ownership mentality takes 100% ownership, 100% responsibility. So either ownership mindset or victim mindset. Either the O is ownership, the V is victim. And we go to victim, blaming, justifying to protect our ego, our fragile ego again. So you look inward, and I'll tell you, people will follow a leader who is open and vulnerable and takes responsibility. I believe they will tend to follow them, because when you take ownership and responsibility, you admit you're wrong, you apologize, you ask for help, you admit you don't know. That's vulnerable. That's being, I think, responsible. That's taking ownership. I think it creates a lot more followership. But victim mentality, most people don't want to be around or follow a victim. Blaming, justifying, pointing fingers everywhere outside of themselves. In my experience, anyway.
Yeah. And then, Bob, what was in terms of your perspective, how people can develop this kind of ownership mindset?
Well, again, to me, it comes to mindset, Sheldon. Remember this affirmation. I know it sounds silly, but I am, it's an I am statement, not I want to be or strive to be. I am, present tense. You're programming your subconscious. So one of the things is I am responsible. I am reliable. So I am responsible, reliable, dependable. You just have this mantra, because here's the only thing I believe you can control in life. It's your mindset. And if you get your mindset and your thinking clear and positive and empowering, you will then program the rest of the cells of your body with that positive, growth-oriented mindset. And then you'll take on new and improved behaviors and get better results. It starts with being. Who are you being? Who you're being from your mind dictates what you're doing behaviorally, and it also dictates a lot to the results you're having. Be, do, have.
Be, do, have.
It starts with who you're being mindset.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, it's kind of redefining yourself, the practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Again and again and again. It never ends. The growth mindset game never ends. It never ends till you no longer can take a breath. As long as you're alive, if you're up for that. But most people don't want to keep growing and changing because, look, we don't like change. We talked about change being difficult, and we really don't want to change ourselves. It's difficult. Yeah. Changing our thinking, our mindset, our patterns of behavior. We don't want that. It's here's what we want. We want everybody else to change for us to make our lives easier. But I don't know about you. I've tried to get people to change, especially when they didn't want to. It never works. The only thing you have control over is changing yourself, and it's a full-time job that needs a helper. All right.
Right.
But all you have to control is changing yourself.
Right. Yeah. Bob,
I don't know any easy way.
Yeah. Bob, you made a very good point, and the people like to have other people changed.
Yes.
In order to make themselves comfortable.
I have not found a system that works to have other people change, especially when they don't want to change. Work on the only person you can have control over, which is yourself. Start there. And once you've mastered this, which is a full-time job for your entire life, then you can maybe work on trying to change others.
Yeah. Okay, great. And to be a leader, you have to be yourself's leader first.
Yes.
Right.
Be the best version of yourself. I call it version 5.0, the most evolved adult version of yourself.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you, Bob. Some more questions. I can just pick up a few more given the time frame.
Okay.
One of the questions is that how do let me see. It's a question about the approach of coaching. How is the approach of private board coaching different from that of general executive coaching? But you may know that in the coaching market, there are some people who position themselves as one-to-one coach. But at the Vistage, we do both, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what I think makes Vistage work so well, Sheldon, is you can have a one-to-one coaching session with your member, talk about some things, maybe get them to take some action promises and help them do some problem solving. But if they've got some big challenges where only 2 brains is not enough, then you can bring in the group. Right. And then they have a group meeting. So every month they have a one-to-one with you, one-on-one as the chair to do coaching and get coaching. Then they can come to the group and basically get coaching from their advisory board of peers, agenda-free, unbiased coaching. And what I believe makes the Vistage model work so well is twice a month, they get what I call their B12 injection of leadership and human beingness. And that's what makes the Vistage model work. One-to-one coaching each month and the group meeting each month. One-to-one group meeting. And that's why the learning and the execution and follow-through on action promises and goals and objectives happen so well. One-on-one coaching is great. One-on-one coaching with a peer group, I think it supercharges it. It makes it 10 times greater and more effective.
Yeah, more powerful.
Yes.
It changed. I just remembered, when I was in Chicago, where you conducted our training group, and you mentioned that you have changed many CEOs' life.
Exactly.
By conducting your work.
It's why I do the work I do as a Vistage chair. Yes.
Right. Okay, Bob. Then one more question. Beside Vistage, there are some similar CEO development organizations. Can you explain the differences and similarities?
Yeah, and there are lots of different companies out there. What I do know is Vistage is the world's leader of private advisory boards for CEOs, executives, and business owners. World's leader. And I believe the main difference is we screen our Vistage chairs. They go through a very rigorous search process and interview process to even get into the training. And then once they get in the training, there's an initial 5-day training and then a couple of follow-on 3-day trainings. And there's follow-on trainings in the field. There's coaches and mentors. So the Vistage chairs are screened to be the very best coaches that are developed and trained with the very best training in the world. And there's ongoing training and development. So you have a professional facilitator leader called the chair running the coaching sessions and the group meetings. Most other organizations don't have as rigorous a screening process. They don't have the level of training and the ongoing development that Vistage has. That's the main difference. Better selection, better training, and ongoing training and development.
Okay. Well, you have summarized the features, more than I can expect. Because we in China, we have tried to explain to our target customers or our target chairs. We have always been challenged by this type of questions. I
understand.
You, Bob.
I understand.
I got you.
Got it.
Okay. Well, given the time, we still have some questions. Bob, what are the similarities? Because you have the experience of chairing both key group and CE group and key groups, right? What are the similarities and differences in terms of the approach of chairing two types of the Vistage groups?
Yeah, so the CEO or business owner group, obviously the decisions are a higher level of strategic importance. The business owners, many of them are founders. They have to make payroll. They're responsible for the entire organization. For many of them, they are the majority partner or sole owner. They've got 70 to 90% of their personal net worth tied in it. So there's a lot more at stake in the kinds of conversations we have at the CEO level. The key executives are more operational, right? They're executing on the strategies and plans, and they don't have as much risk or as much at stake. And yet the key executives are very much think like owners and want to help the company grow profitably, top line revenue and bottom line net profit. So the topics are a little more tactical and strategic at the key level. And at the CEO level, they tend to be a lot more strategic with more importance and impact.
And any kind of variation in terms of your approach in handling the
I really don't. When I lead those group meetings, again, the key executives typically don't get one-on-one coaching. That's the other difference. The CEOs get one-to-one coaching, the key executives don't. But I run the group meetings the same agenda, same format, with whether there's a speaker, whether we have a host presentation, the issues and opportunities, I use the same formula. So it's basically the same sign-in sheet. It's the same process. It's just the level of topics discussed are a little bit different at the key executive level versus the CEO level.
Mm-hmm. So the major difference is you don't do one-to-one
Right, with the key execs. No one-to-one coaching with the key execs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you, Bob. One more question. Is there any this friend is very interesting. He asks the question: is there any empirical research on the Vistage Private Business Board approach that can be used as a reference for us? I don't know what is definition of empirical research.
So empirical research. Well, we know Vistage works because we've done, as far as results, Vistage has done studies where Vistage member companies grow at 2.2 times the growth rate of non-Vistage member companies. That's a Dun & Bradstreet study.
Yeah.
So in other words, if a company is doing 8% year-over-year compounded annual revenue growth, on average, after joining, on average, they could get upwards of 20% compounded revenue growth. So that's empirical data that Vistage members outperform non-members by a 2.2 times growth rate difference. And in the last few years, Vistage member companies grew at something like 4.6 or 4.7%, where non-Vistage companies lost 4.5 or 4.6%. So it was almost a 9% difference in growth.
9%. Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of growth.
Right. Difference between members and non-members.
Okay. Just for your information, Bob, we have done in China we'll call business owners confidence index. Basically, it's a modification version of Vistage US CEO confidence index.
Okay.
And the result is, the feedback is even though the market confidence level is lower, but our index is better than the market average.
Got it. Yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, well, Bob, you have been the master chair and the best practice chair for quite a long time. And now is the time for, could you share with us some successful cases and experiences at Vistage?
Well, I guess the most successful case I can tell you for Vistage members is with Vistage, if they apply what they learn, they achieve personal financial independence. The members, the CEOs and business owners, personal financial independence. They've got the money they need to work it out. Yeah. They've sold their company successfully or handed them down to their management to run or the next generation in their family. They lead happier, healthier lives. They work way fewer hours. They sell their companies for a lot more money than they ever thought possible. They live their dream. They live their ideal life, and they fulfill their goals and personal vision. So basically, their company grows faster, grows easier, with less stress, less risk. They make more money. They have more time. They have better personal relationships. They have time to take vacations, pursue hobbies and interests. They're happier and healthier as human beings, and those around them are happier and healthier.
Okay.
Many benefits.
Okay, great. Then Bob, any kind of cases that you feel that are the most impressive in terms of your?
Well, again, my most successful members, typically they double or triple their revenue. I mean, I have members that, again, been with me 15, 20 years. They started off with their companies doing 2, 3, 4, 5 million in annual revenue, US dollars, and they're up to 25, 30, 50, 100 million. They grow by 10 times or greater top line, their bottom line also grows 3, 5, 10 times. Again, by applying the principles of what I've talked about with accountability and everything else they learn, the cumulative effect of month-over-month Vistage meetings has them be wiser leaders and better human beings to grow their organizations. So again, my most successful members, they can show you when they start with Vistage, they show the growth curve of revenue and profit, and it just goes all the way up on average year over year. And as it's growing more profitably, they are also working fewer hours, 70 hours a week down to 50, down to 40, down to 30, down to 10. Some don't work at all. The company's totally self-managed. And they're pursuing all their hobbies, interests, seeing their children grow up, and having much better relationships, both at work and at home.
Okay, so better decision, better leader, better result.
Exactly.
Okay. Bob, thank you. You have been with Vistage for so long, and you have also trained many Vistage chairs. As you know, I know that in the US you have done the regular training for chairs. You have any kind of sharing or insights you can share with the chairs on the Vistage China side? No.
Well, the two biggest things I can give, as I mentioned, Sheldon, is develop relationships with their members in their groups where people feel safe to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
Bring the messy, not looking good topics to their peer group, and train their members to be challenging in a confrontational, respectful, dignified way with questions, with observation. Vulnerability and challenge are the two distinguishing characteristics. And chairs have to be comfortable. If a chair's not comfortable being vulnerable themselves and challenging, they're not going to be comfortable training their members to be vulnerable and challenging. Those are the two distinguishing characteristics I find for high-performing chairs and groups and low-performing. And most chairs and groups are lacking in some vulnerability or some challenge, and that's what keeps them low-performing, from my perspective.
Any difference between newly launched group and a group with long history?
Yeah, well, I mean, as members get to know each other better, they tend to be more open, more vulnerable. Now, the other thing that happens too is sometimes groups, long-time groups, get to know each other as friendships. And sometimes they're afraid of being vulnerable in front of their friend or challenging a friend. So it's a tricky thing. You want your groups to be bonded and connected, and that happens over a long period of time. But I don't want them to become so friendly that they're afraid of asking questions or giving feedback. So you got to watch that. I've got long established groups and long-term members, and I want to make sure that I think the best way to be a friend with a fellow member is to make it safe for them to be vulnerable. Be vulnerable in front of that friend. Challenge the friend. So again, vulnerability and challenge. So sometimes with newer groups, it's almost easier to be more vulnerable and challenging than sometimes well-established groups, because the well-established groups are so connected as friends.
Oh, interesting.
You've got to watch that. You got to watch the vulnerability and challenge dynamic continuously.
Yeah, people have been together for long, and they kind of
they don't want to hurt their friends. They don't want to hurt their friends' feelings. Yeah,
friends' feelings.
I've been to a lot of group meetings of other chairs, and the members have been together too long. So vulnerability and challenges are the two barometers or two measures that I look for with chairs and in groups.
Interesting. Yeah, this is really something that to my surprise.
Yeah.
Because in China, we the longest history. The group with longest history is 12 years. We still, lag quite behind.
Got it.
Okay, Bob, thank you so much for you taking your I know that highly valuable your time with us.
You're very welcome, Sheldon. It's my pleasure.
Yeah, thank you again, Bob, for you sharing and your insights in terms of how to incorporate a culture or instill a culture into a company. And your ways of coaching leaders and train leaders. On behalf of our audience, thank you again. Highly
My
appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Sheldon. I'm at your service. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I wish you nothing but the best.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. And hi, audience in our chat room. Thank you for your patience and your participation. Also, my thanks also go to our team. Thanks for your support. Good night to you both.
Yeah, thanks to the team. Thanks to everybody. Greatly appreciate it. Bye-bye now.
Bye.